Hi, thank you so much for having me. How's the morning going so far? Pretty good? Yeah. Okay. Today we are going to talk about customer success as a tool to drive sales velocity within your organization. And the interesting thing about customer success for me is that I haven't always been in the world of customer success. I sort of have a sales engineering, marketing, and operational background, and but I have been a customer experience enthusiast for the last 15 years and practitioner. And what I find is that the practice of customer success is really kind of the accumulation of all of those things, because after the sale, hello, you're with the moment. You are working with the client to make sure that they are getting the very most out of the system, but also to make sure that you are able to expand and, okay. Should I use this instead? Should I take this off? To make sure that you're going to be able to effectively expand and renew that business, because as we all know, if a SaaS company makes it to 10 years, about 70 to 80% of your revenue is going to be coming from your existing customer base. So on that note, a little bit about me. I don't know if anybody's ever seen When Harry Met Sally, but this is my baby fish mouth impression. And two things are important about this. One is it's important to be able to laugh about yourself sometimes, but also I was around when people were actually taking pictures with real cameras, and that's something to be proud of, because nobody does that anymore. I work at a company called DoubleEdge, where I am the Chief Customer Officer there. DoubleEdge is a company based out of San Francisco, and we create technology that allows sales and marketing professionals to apply the principles of digital marketing to the live event space, like today. If you have used the app, then you have used one of our products. In the past, I've also been CCO and CMO at prior companies, and so what I think you'll find woven through my talk is really about this message of there is magic that happens when customer experience, marketing, and sales work well together. And that is sort of my general philosophy for life anyway. Okay, so customer success has evolved in the enterprise, right? Really, it's been around for plus or minus, I'd say 15 years in true practice. However, it really started around in the early 2000s, 2001 with Concur, but 2004, 2003 was really when the practice of customers for life really started coming out of Salesforce. And we were really reactive up until that time because we didn't have the data to be able to be proactively calling out to customers. Now, into the mid-teens, what we see is that early pre-integrated systems, or ecosystems, which the first one was the Salesforce partner ecosystem, enabled people to be able to connect disparate data sets together. And with those disparate data sets connected, we were able to see what was happening in various stages of the customer lifecycle in one place. And because of that, what we are able to do at that point is we're able to be more proactive about outreach, right? Over the last couple of years, what's been really interesting is we've seen a real maturation of both the SaaS ecosystem, but also of the SaaS stack. And what that has enabled us to do is it's enabled us to really have a truly connected set of data across the entire customer journey. And that allows us to be more predictive, right? We can actually benchmark things about what is real customer health. We can benchmark things about what is going to drive true renewal or what is indicative of renewal, and also what is indicative of expansion. So in this predictive customer success world, we see that customer success is now able to deliver insights back to the business where you get this flywheel effect going. Now I'm going to start with adoption because that's really where kind of customer success steps in. With adoption, the number one thing that the CSM is really going to be focused on is going to be focused on reducing or accelerating time to value. Who in this room uses the time to value metric in their business? Time to value is really interesting because, and it's been sort of thrown around here or there, very few by the way, because you're taking the client side view of when they are achieving value from you. As opposed to most onboarding programs are looking at sort of achieving milestones. Hey, great, they're set up and they're good to go. We're going to transition them to another group for account management. When you think about things in terms of time to value, what you're going to find is that customers are achieving value at different times of the first year of their life cycle of implementation. So accelerating time to value is going to be very, very critical. Understanding expansion stakeholders as well as building advocacy, all of those are very important things that happen during adoption. For expansion phase, customer success is really working with the sales organization to grow the advocacy footprint, but as well, that is enabling us to shift from this notion of being treated as a vendor to being thought of as a business partner, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a bit. As we get to renewal, if we've done those two things right, adoption and expansion, we've now shifted from a transactional to persistent value, right? Instead of just buying us and then on a year-round basis us having to resell and renew, the value's already there because we've become more and more embedded as the year has gone on. And that year-round expansion drives an automatic renewal. And this is where the flywheel comes in, right? Everything that we're learning about our customers, what's working, what's not working, all of that goes back to the top of the funnel and is driving target segmentation rules, it's driving your content marketing, and those advocates that you're building are really becoming your best references and referrals. Okay. So I'd like to spend a bit of time talking about this notion of accelerating time to value because I think in the SaaS world, especially SaaS enterprise, the amount of time that you have after time to value has been achieved is maybe the most critical thing that you have during that first year. If it takes 6 months to achieve time to value from the client side perspective, then you only have 6 months to expand that business, right? So the sooner you are able to achieve time to value, the more time you have during that first year to gather enough data so you can be predictive with your customer success. Some of the things that you can consider are implementing express programs. You definitely want to make sure that you're aligning upfront on key metrics and milestones. And then you want to make sure that the data that you're capturing is going to support those client-stated goals around time to value. In terms of express programs, it's really easy for me to stand up here and say, hey, you should have an express program. But there are a couple of ways that you can go about doing that. You can engage with partners. There are a lot of great partners out there that are already doing those implementations for other companies, and they can assist with bringing that on. And if you have a partner ecosystem already, or a formal partner program already, this is a great way to very quickly stand an express program up. Leveraging your internal professional services has always been sort of the standard way that SaaS companies have stood up express programs. And then, of course, there's the startup world, right, where you just get things done. And if you have clients that are within that segment, you're just going to take care of it. Aligning up front on key milestones. So if it's important for you to have ecosystem connections, those should be identified up front, right? If the client is thinking about data visualization or what are these insights that I should be deriving as a part of achieving business outcomes, then you need to identify those up front, because if you don't deliver that, then you have not achieved time to value. Is workflow automation really important to them? Is getting to specific types of users really important to your client? All of those roll into this idea of having a material effect on business outcome. And once that has happened, then you can move on to outside of the customer success realm. This piece of it, I think, is really interesting because I think a lot of people, especially when they think about sort of data, they will pull reports that are interesting to them and interesting to other customers, but there's very little action that is tied to that data, right? And that can be applied back to the business and can be tied back to business outcomes. I think a lot of BI tools are really interesting there, right? But the what do I do with this data is one of those things where you just don't know, what do I do with this data? For us, for instance, if the client is thinking about engagement or lead gen as a key business outcome that they're using us for, then it's important for us to deliver back to them information that will drive their lead gen efforts and get them to a better place than they were before they had spent money with us. Most importantly, around accelerating time to value is that the information capture happens before the onboarding period takes place. It happens before customer success gets engaged. So all of the information that you're gathering when the customer is researching as a prospect, when they're negotiating, when they're talking to the sales rep, all of that leads up to the company being able to accelerate time to value. Next, I'm going to dive into this idea of early expansion stakeholder mapping. If I could get a sense of the folks in the room, who is selling to large enterprises? Okay, great. Who's selling to sort of SMB midsize? Awesome. Okay, thanks. So the larger the enterprise, the more complex that stakeholder mapping becomes, right? And mapping an organization is critically important to being able to understand who you need to get connected with. Now, the challenge, and I love this Neo4j visualization of stakeholder mapping because the challenge is less about what the organization looks like, and it's more about who is influencing decisions and who is making those decisions, right? It's these days in very matrixed organizations, knowing who that is based on their title is not as easy as it has been in the past. So I would recommend, and this is where customer success can really help with stakeholder mapping, is align your stakeholder mapping relative to the onboarding that you have in place. Now, it could be, and these are some areas that may be in place. So you may have, a learning stage, enablement stage, vendor alignment stage, process alignment stage. In each of those stages during onboarding, you're going to have key individuals that are both within the immediate project team, but also sort of extended project teams within other functions that could be good targets for you in terms of expansion opportunity. So relative to onboarding, you always want to map out in the beginning with the client your if-then inclusions. So who are these project teams, right? You have your immediate project team, and then you have your cross-functional stakeholders. If you're doing technical work, if you're doing creative work, if you need to talk to marketing, you need to talk to finance, get those people mapped up front. And then you also want to define your green escalations as well as your red escalations. Most projects during customer success onboarding really only focus on if something goes wrong. But it's really important also to identify with the project lead on the client side, who should we be celebrating with if something goes really right? If we over-deliver. And so those people become sort of a mapping of the executive influencers over time. And after time to value has been achieved, you really are looking at your project owners becoming your expansion references internally, and then your cross-functional stakeholders and your executive influencers become your targets. And that is a very quick way to just tactically take the information that you have and start expanding within the organization. Now, that's supposed to be on the bottom one. So your growth targets are going to be based on what you're onboarding, right? Are you onboarding a proof of concept? Are you onboarding just a platform license or for full license consumption? So if you're onboarding for a POC conversion, for instance, customer success is going to be working with the salesperson to understand what is after that gate, right? After we've finished that POC, what are the things that we're looking to get? And then we can orient the entire project around getting to that point as opposed to just getting to the POC. When you're thinking about license consumption, really what you're looking to do is you're looking to consume all of the licenses as quickly as possible. And so during the mapping exercise with your project team, the customer success manager can be talking about what additional groups can be adopted and in what timeline. Once that's mapped out, we can accelerate that timeline. Okay, so customer success drives content marketing. This is going way back up to the top of the funnel, right? And it's very, very early stage. In 2015, this was November, DGR did a study with B2B buyers, and they asked sort of what is most valuable to you when you're doing your research for B2B purchases. Case studies and white papers continue to be, in 2015, the most valuable piece of content out there. And the case studies, they come from successful use cases that customer success is helping to onboard and implement. Two things that I would recommend, there we go. One is you want to build into the onboarding program the ask. So just put it in there. It's a stage. And it's something that happens with every conversation if the customer is above a certain NPS or a certain score, for instance, or achieves a certain milestone ahead of schedule. And then the second thing is you separate the reference CTA from the case studies CTA. And the reason for that is because in order to do a case study, which is basically I've had success with your product and I want to tell everybody about it, you need to have more time in order for that customer to have shown sort of real value from your offering, but they don't have to be all the way there in order to be an active reference for you. And so have the reference CTA earlier stage, and then the case study CTA a little bit later after they have sort of achieved additional value and you're more than halfway through the adoption phase. And these use cases that you're getting to create all of the white papers and case studies, these right use cases, they breed healthy pipelines that close faster. So customer success is going to be supporting the sales organization in helping to understand what is going to work in practice in the real world with your technology, right? They're going to say this worked great or this didn't work great because of this. And we can work with the product organization to understand if this is a use case that we want to get more deeply into or if that's something that we need to segment away from. Now, the great thing about right use cases and healthy pipelines is that once we get into the swing of those things, we are really helping the sales org identify the champions that are going to be the face of your brand. And this is really important for early research phase, right? Your prospects are going to be going to your website. They're going to be looking at case studies, but they're also going to be looking at a quick swath of brands that already use your technology. And so you want to make sure that those reference CTAs are happening early enough and you're asking every time for a happy customer so you can put their logos up on your website. What are some ways that we are helping to identify these right use cases? Well, we're looking at customer health overall. We're looking at customer use cases that are actually expanding. And we're also looking at sort of the usage behavior, right? What is that driving within the company, within the client-side company? We're looking at the types of engagement that they're having. Are they expensive in terms of cost to deliver against, or are they a scalable, great, positive relationship? And are they giving us good feedback? Are they satisfied from an NPS perspective, but also are they helping us becoming a better company? The last piece is going to be around this notion of shifting from a vendor to a business partner. Someone on the main stage earlier today was talking about the trust being extremely important, and I agree with that. the shift from vendor to business partner is about the shift of increasing loyalty and trust over time. Within customer success, it's a little bit different, but I think is extremely sort of practical advice for sales professionals as well, is that in a predictive customer success world, we're using the product and business level data and the insights that we're deriving from that data in order to drive conversations that create additional loyalty and trust. So when we are able to do that, that helps us build a better product roadmap. It also helps us deliver against mutual value over time. I'll give you an example. So this is a screen. It's actually behind from 2014. It was a couple years ago, but I still love this story. This is from the Game Developers Conference. And it was like March 14th, something like that. And this little company called Oculus VR had taken over the exhibitor space. And we had powered the GDC for several years at that point. And Epic, Riot, and one other game shop, they always, every year, are at the top, right? And this year, Oculus was at the top. We know they had just gotten funded by Kickstarter not too long ago, but we didn't know much else. They didn't have a product in market. So we called the GDC folks and we're like, do you guys know who Oculus is? And they said, oh, well, they bought a really small booth. Yeah, we know who they are. They're doing early VR stuff. They bought a really small booth kind of in the back. And we said, oh, well, maybe you should get them to spend more money next year. And 2 weeks later, Mark Zuckerberg announced the $2 billion acquisition. $2 billion, right? And there were early indicators at the event that there was strong interest in sort of the activity and what Oculus was doing. And this company didn't really have a ton to show for, right? They just looked like every other sort of early gaming company. They were funded by Kickstarter 18 months prior. They had no product in market, and they were pretty early stage, right? But we were able to take that data and give them some insight into what was happening at their event that they hadn't previously been aware of. So we take that to understand what can we learn from those people. A customer advisory board is one way that we go about doing it, but there are a lot of other ways that you can garner information from customers as well. But having the conversation around not just what they need, but what do they see about the future of the industry that you're in, will help you really deliver against the product roadmap and sort of adjust your messaging platform to make sure you're capturing the next stage of customers. So I spent some time kind of talking about the sandwich of acquisition and adoption, and then a little bit about the vendor business partner transition. I think what's really important about sort of the flywheel of the insights that customer success can bring is that at every stage that you're moving your customer down through the customer journey, there's going to be some set of information that you're going to learn, that someone is going to learn, right? And find a way to operationalize capturing that information. Because if that information gets lost and they have to repeat themselves, which they probably never will again, it'll just be lost, right? Those are actually the insights that are going to allow you to sort of stay ahead of what that customer is needing, and to stay ahead of what they think their problems are. I think we have a few minutes for questions if we have any. Otherwise, I'm going to be at the DoubleEdge co-sponsored happy hour tonight too. Happy to talk about anything there. And this is my contact information, so feel free to reach out anytime. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Annie. How about another round of applause for Annie? Thanks. Hello, everybody. So we're going to be continuing on the customer success this morning, but we need to do a little bit of a step change here. So we're going to have the team bring out some furniture because we have a panel session next. And that's great because part of the panel is to give you an opportunity to be able to engage with the customers and be able to talk with the customer panels as well. So one thing I do want to